Okay, I'd like to introduce McMillan, who will take us to the Indices of Deprivation.
Thank you, Harry. Hello everyone, my name is Kat, I work for Boscombe Generation, and I'm here to talk to you today about a very exciting subject called the Indices of Deprivation. I admit to being a data geek, so I do get excited by this sort of stuff. I appreciate that not everyone else does. So I'm just going to give you a very quick overview of this. It's a very complex data set basically, and what we will be doing is holding a separate session, because this is the sort of stuff that you can use to get funding from organisations like Big Lottery and other funding sources. So we'll be doing a separate session for voluntary organisations, third sectors, charities, to help them understand how they can use this data better to get funding for their cause. So the Indices of Deprivation are produced by the Department of Communities and Local Government, so that's central government. This is a national recognised measure of deprivation. So basically you can look at anywhere within England and use this to identify how deprived an area is. Now, as Harry said earlier, already the data is out of date within this. The last Indices of Deprivation that was released was in 2010, and that used data from 2006. These are the 2015 indices, and as I go through each slide, I'll tell you which data sets they use and from what years they're used from. So about the indices, they are a measure of deprivation relative to other areas across England. So in essence, what does that mean? If I took reception year within this school and I asked them all to line up in height order, shortest at one end, tallest at the other, and I quite rudely said that the shortest had a ranking of 1 because it was the most height deprived, and at the other end was 90. I think we've got 3-year intake here, haven't we? So 90 at the other end, that was the least height deprived. You can sort of get an understanding of how the numbers, if you went 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 90, show you how those children are ranked. But all you're doing is measuring them against other areas, against other children. So this is always about how you rank relative to other areas. That's a really key thing you need to know about the indices. As just mentioned, they're produced every 3 to 5 years. They are not a measure of poverty. Okay, poverty, the definition of poverty refers to lack of finances, of resources, of material possessions. These are about deprivation, and there are a whole range of different types of deprivation. It could be health deprivation. You could be more deprived because of crime levels within your area. It could be housing deprivation. It could be education and skills deprivation. So you need to think of it in terms of deprivation rather than poverty. As I've mentioned already, it's a rank, so it's placing you in order against the other areas. You're comparing it against someone else. And it uses a total of 37 different types of data sets to make up the indices. And most of the indices are historical data from between 2010 and 2012. Thank you. Right, what's different about this is that you can make data available at very, very small local neighbourhood area levels. So whereas you're all probably either Boscombe West or Boscombe East ward, that ward probably contains between about 8,000 and 9,000 people. So if I actually wanted to try and assess whether that ward as a whole was deprived, if I just think about Boscombe West ward on its own, in the heart of Boscombe West, we've obviously got quite extreme deprivation, but if I took a stroll down to the seafront, I'm obviously going through some that are slightly less deprived. If you lump all those people in together, you get a sort of an averaging out, if that makes sense. So by looking at a large area like wards, you don't really get a true understanding of what's going on within an area. So across England, we can actually break it up into small areas of about 1,500 people. These are called lower settlement output areas. I'm just going to refer to them as areas. There are a total of 32,844 of these areas across England. One is the most deprived, 32,844 is the least deprived. And altogether there are actually 16 different tables of deprivation, but today I'm just going to give you a headline of what we consider to be the most important ones. Right. So this is a small map of the Boscombe West ward. Within your ward, within the Boscombe West ward, there are 6 of these super output areas, the school areas. Each one has about 1,500 people. And the idea then is that you're always looking at the same geography based on the number of people rather than actually the size of it. Because Boscombe West has grown so much in size, we know that between the 2001 and the 2011 census, the ward's actually grown by 30%. So it's seen a significant growth within the area. Bournemouth saw 12% growth. Now, because we've seen so much growth within this ward, they have to put 2 additional super output areas into the ward. Basically, what this means is that for 4 out of 6 of the areas within the ward, I can tell you what its ranking was within 2010, but 2 of the areas, because they're new geographies, I've got nothing to compare them against. So I can really only focus on the ones which were covered in the Indices of Deprivation in 2010. Right, key principles. The level of deprivation refers to the area, okay? So it refers to that geographical area with 1,500 people in it. Not all of those people within that area will experience the same level of deprivation, so that's quite key. Now, if you are working in an organisation where you do need to apply for funding or something like that, the definition of deprivation that is recognised by people like the Big Lottery or other funding providers is you are an area of deprivation if you are within the 20% most deprived areas in England. So 20% is the recognised definition. A change in ranking does not mean that an area has got better or got worse. So if you ranked 10,000 in the 2010 Indices of Deprivation, you now rank 12,000, you probably think, oh, actually that sounds like we've got a lot better. But what it could mean is that 2,000 areas have actually got worse than you. You could have stayed exactly the same, so you need to be really, really careful how you interpret this information. And unfortunately, because it takes so long for them to collect all this information in indices, this data is already out of date by the time they publish it. Right, so we're going to get into the nitty-gritty now. Now I've given you all the warnings about how to use it, how to interpret it. The overall indices of multiple deprivation. This lumps together all of those other indices, health, crime, employment, housing, and just gives one ranking for all of those. So area 282, we call that Central Boscombe. Now that's the area around Boscombe Crescent, Remelia Lane, it picks up areas around Boscombe Precinct and the Sovereign Centre. That, in the 2010 Indices of Deprivation, was the most deprived area in the southwest. Now, if you think about how big the southwest is, it takes in areas around Brighton, Bristol, Bristol, really deprived areas. Our area right in the centre was the most deprived area in the southwest. It's no longer the most deprived area in the southwest. It's seen its ranking improve from 113 to 266. Of the 4 areas where I can compare the data, 3 areas have improved, 1 area has lessened its ranking. But key, remember it's about that 20%, 4 out of 6 areas are within the most deprived in the country. We've seen no change there. Income deprivation, this measures the proportion of the population experience deprivation relating to low income. So this uses data from things like income support, job seekers allowance, employment and support allowance, working tax credit from 2012. So again, you can see this data is already a little bit out of date. We've seen 3 areas improve their ranking, they've got better. The area around St Clement's, that particular area there, that's actually the most deprived area in Bournemouth. And 3 out of the areas are within the 20% most deprived in the country. Right, so to tend that up, that all sounds really quite doom and gloom really, although some areas seem to have got better. So what we do in terms of Boscombe regeneration, we're actually tracking a whole range of data sets so that we can have a pretty much up-to-date idea of how things are changing. So if we relied just on this data, it would look really bad. But when we review the data that we've got, we now know that we've seen significant improvements. So those numbers that were around job seekers allowance, employment support agency, we now know that our economically active population has actually increased dramatically to 73%. It's now in line with the Bournemouth average. So we see huge improvements within that area there. I think if we had up-to-date information producing indices of deprivation, it would show a completely different figure there. If we can go on to health deprivation, please, thank you. Right, so this measures the risk of premature death and the impairment of quality of life through poor physical or mental health. Okay, so the area that we call Central Boscombe, again, the area around the Crescent, that's the most deprived area in the Bournemouth, but it's seen its ranking improve from 239 to 593. 4 areas are still within the most 20% deprived, but all areas across the area have improved their ranking. This used life expectancy data, so basically it tells you if you were a male or a female born in a particular area between 2008 and 2013, what age are you, what's the average age you're likely to die? And the data that they're using would have told you that a male born in that area in that time is likely to die at about age 68.5, significantly younger than the Bournemouth average. If we've used today's data, the life expectancy now is 71.4. It's improved dramatically. You've seen a major improvement there. So again, if this data that was used for the health deprivation data was more up to date, I'm confident we will see a much better ranking across all of the areas within the Boscombe West Ward. Thank you. Employment deprivation. So this measures the proportion of the working age population in an area who are involuntarily excluded from the labour market. Basically that means people who would want to work but can't because of perhaps a health illness or some other mitigating factor, they're a carer, something like that. So Central Boscombe remains the most deprived area in Bournemouth, but its rankings improved significantly from 51 to 461. All 4 areas remain within the 20% most deprived, but all have seen their rankings improve significantly. And again, if I was to actually use more up-to-date data rather than the data they've used, which is from 2012 to 2013, in 2012, the job seekers allowance claimant rate within Boscombe West Ward was 7.7. That's really, really bad actually. Now it's 2.2.
Because most of them being suspended.
No comment on that, sir. Job seekers allowance. So if we use the data from today, we actually see a very, very different picture there. That was an overview of 4 of the slides. There's actually 16 different tables, and it goes down to a lot of data. You can look at income deprivation affecting older people, income deprivation affecting children, employment, skills, training, young people's attainment, adult education. There's a whole wealth of data that I could talk about probably in about an hour, and no, you're not here to listen to me, you're here to...
What are you believing in?
Indices of multiple deprivation. Yeah, that's what its short term is. So if you want to know more, there's a very in-depth report which tells you all about the data that's used. It's on our webpage, bournemouth.gov.uk/Boscombe Regeneration. There's a research and statistics page. Have a look on there. It's got all the data there. We've also got all of our resident survey data there, a wealth of information. As I said, we'll also be doing a separate session, a more in-depth session where you can do questions and answers about the indices if you are a third sector or a voluntary organisation.
Questions specifically about that? On the back.
Hi, just voicing the residents of Boscombe East. I realise you can't go into statistics for everything, and I would presume that Boscombe East doesn't include the most deprived areas. However, without going into details, are you aware of any significant changes in the indices for Boscombe East? For example, I would guess that the population has risen due to all the new build, the flats, etc.
Yeah. The only ward across Bournemouth that hasn't seen an increase of population is over in the West Howe area, the Kingston area. All other wards have seen an increase in growth as you'd expect. I haven't done an in-depth analysis of the Boscombe East one yet, but that is the next one to do. So I will probably take that to post down community forum for them to have a more in-depth understanding of what's going on. So,
okay, will you refer some of that back to Boscombe?
absolutely,
Boscombe
yes.
Forum?
Yes, I'll send it around and then I'll put the details on so you can ask more detailed questions if you want afterwards as well.
Okay.
If we can have a copy of that and put them up on the website. Have we got any other questions relating to the thing? We can move on. I forgot to say earlier that we thank you very much, Kat. It was informative. And if you want to know a bit more, especially if you're looking for funding, that's the website. We weren't having a police update today. We've got Colin in the back of the room who's going to have to leave at some point. But he's, if you need to ask him anything, you can catch him now, or if there's any specific question for the police. So there's no pressing matters for the police. We will be having the police here soon to we have them regularly to do a police update and to answer any questions. But so we want to allow Council Leader John Beasley to speak.